Welcome to Campus Conversations. I'm Tim Taylor, President of Shawnee College, and I got with me a special guest this morning, Dr. Landon Sommer. Dr. Sommer is the Superintendent at Century Schools, our brother right down the road.
That's right.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. Glad to be here.
You're starting the summer now.
Yep, starting the summer. That's the quiet time of the year, but also the real busy time of the year. So
yeah, doing lots of construction.
We've got a handful of things going on. We've got some HVAC work going on throughout the building. We've also still got some gym repairs going on.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, pretty busy in the building.
We'll get to that gym in a minute there, man. So it feels like you need a construction hat some days, doesn't it?
It does, a little bit, yeah.
Does it get real loud around your office sometimes?
It hasn't been too terribly bad. I think I'm kind of far enough away from some of the main work. The one thing that I think I hear more than anything is the constant beeping from some of their scissor lifts.
Oh, yeah.
As they're driving around.
And driving in reverse.
I feel like I should be hearing that in my sleep. But
it feels like you should get an OSHA certification just for being in your office, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's start a little bit with your story. You and I have known each other for about 5 years now. So I know you a little bit, but maybe some of the folks out here would like to get to know you a little bit better. Tell us about yourself, your family, how you grew up, what you're doing. Just whatever you want to share.
Absolutely. So I was raised just outside of Joppa. Went through elementary school, high school, all my schooling at Joppa in Maple Grove with elementary school. Graduated from there, had a whopping 17 in my graduating class. Ended up coming here for first 2 years of college. Played baseball with Coach Shepard. Got my associates while I was here.
What position did you play?
It's actually kind of funny because I spent a semester at each infield position.
Oh, really?
Short, third, second, and first. So I moved all around the field.
Did you have a preference?
Well, growing up, I played a lot of outfield, a lot of center field. High school, I was more shortstop, so that was kind of more natural to me.
Mm-hmm.
I liked short and third. Seemed to be a little more action over there.
Yeah. Mostly because there's right-handed hitters.
Yeah. First base was a different experience for me. I hadn't really played a whole lot of first base, but I tried picking it up the best I could.
Yeah, people don't understand that there's a real technique as it relates to playing first and third.
Absolutely.
But middle infielders, of course, they have to have a lot of range and stuff. So
true. Like I said, I got my associates here, went on to SIU, got my degree in math education. Actually met my
math my brother.
Absolutely. I met my wife, my future wife at the time. She's also a math teacher. She teaches at Anna Jonesboro now. But graduated from SIU, started my teaching career, spent 6 years teaching high school math at Massac County. After that, I actually kind of went back home for my first administrative job. I was principal at Joppa for 3 years. And then Century kind of opened up right as I finished my superintendent certificate, and it kind of came together real quick. My wife was actually pregnant with our third child, and the night that I interviewed with the board and was offered the position, we ended up rushing to the hospital after I got home, and she ended up having the baby early the next morning.
Wow.
So that was kind of a wild night.
I bet it was.
That was my first experience finding out Century doesn't have a whole lot of cell signal. I was interviewing with the board and come out of it, and my phone starts going off with multiple calls and texts that I need to get home quick.
Well, it was still kind of a celebration on two levels, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It was a whirlwind though, for sure. But yeah, we've got 3 kids now, all pretty great kids. I'm a little biased, but
you should be.
They're all, I don't know.
What's their ages?
13, 11, and 8. They're, I don't know if I've told you this story or not about their names, but they're all kind of sports related. Go
ahead, tell us.
My wife was very generous in letting me have a say in the name. So our oldest daughter is Caroline Fenway. I'm a big Red Sox fan.
Oh, yeah.
So
I forgot about that one.
Sweet Caroline is the song they played all the home games, and then of course Fenway Park. My middle child, our son, he's Jack Dallas. He was actually going to be Jacoby, after Jacoby Ellsbury, but
Yeah.
he was born the year that Jacoby went to the Yankees, so
The Yanks.
we couldn't do that. But shortens to Jack, which is actually kind of my grandfather's name, anyways, and Dallas. Not for the Cowboys. I'm a big Mavericks fan, so grew up enjoying Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, and all them.
Well, you got to deal with Mark Cuban.
Yeah. So, and then our third one might be the most interesting. Her name is Emery Espen, and
ESPN.
we told the nurse the night that she was born the name, and the nurse is like, "Oh, that's very cute," and we spelled it for her. She's like, "Oh, yep, ESPN." So yeah, they've all got their own little stories.
Does she go around here now?
She should. She doesn't yet, but I'm sure she will someday.
That's awesome. So they're at camp now, right?
Yep, they've been at basketball camp here. This is the 4th day, so they've been enjoying it with Coach Sparks down there. So.
And I introduced you as Dr. Landon Sommer. That's a new title.
So
you just finished up that, didn't you?
That was actually kind of in the middle of COVID. It still sounds kind of weird to hear doctor, honestly. But I finished that up through McKendree, and I was set to defend my dissertation April-ish of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everything got shut down at that point. So I think I was probably one of the early ones to defend my dissertation on Zoom.
Really?
Which was very interesting. But yeah, it was kind of a neat experience. So
When I defended my dissertation, they set aside 2 hours for it, and I had about a presentation that would go on and off for about an hour. I got about 5 minutes into the presentation, and they started arguing amongst themselves for almost an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh my goodness!
I didn't have to say a lot. And they're like, "Hey, good job." How was yours? I mean, on mine they probably didn't do that as much.
Not as much. I mean, there was I can't remember how long it took me. It was probably close to an hour, but they were all pretty friendly and with myself and with each other, I guess. So it went well. The biggest thing is I got it done. So
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
was most important.
Shoot, I was ABD for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I did all my coursework at Madison and finished in 2000, and then we moved for a job in Decatur, Richland at the time. And Cody was just born, and taking on a new job and trying to just finish the dissertation was a lot more work than I ever anticipated. But I'll tell you, and maybe you can say the same thing, it was one of the best learning experiences of my entire life.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I would do it again in a minute. It really taught me how to write and think. And
I don't know if I'd do it again in a minute. It was a good experience.
Well,
I would do everything but the dissertation again.
all right, that's fair. That's fair. So, along those same lines, if you could take a sabbatical and go back to school yourself with no responsibilities, full student life, full student experience, what would you study and why?
Oh, that's a good question. When I was going through high school, I had, math teacher was always one of my goals. Of course, administration being the ultimate goal, and math teacher was kind of a step to get there.
Right.
But I also had a lot of interest in kind of architect, engineering, that side of things. Was very interested in that. So that would be up there. But I think as I've gone through administration, education over the years, I'm really intrigued by school law.
Really?
Absolutely. When we took our master's for administration in the school law class, it really got me thinking a lot about school law, and kind of considered switching for a while, but I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't. But I think if I could go back, that might be something I would focus on, is law, and more specifically school law.
Well, I can certainly understand that. I've joked with our board often, you guys need to send me back to school so I can get my law degree. I mean, I would say, and I'm not exaggerating at all, at least 10% of my time is reviewing contracts and making sure that we're in compliance with legal statutes and all kinds of different things, and trying to figure out what some of these statutes mean and translate them into
and
action.
With them constantly changing, new laws. And
of course, most of them are unfunded mandates. So, but I mean, there's just so many things, and I mean, if I didn't have a legal counsel, we'd probably be in trouble all the time. So. But I do a lot. I've learned a lot about law over the last 17 years, especially as president. So
it's very intriguing to me, and kind of the debating, being able to debate side of things is interesting as well.
It's interesting. You take a law and you put it down, and you put 3 lawyers in the room. You're going to get 3 different opinions of what that says. So I see how that legal stuff works, but that's an interesting concept. So where would you go to law school then?
Oh goodness, I don't know.
Don't tell me no online stuff.
No, I wouldn't want to do an online one, especially if there's no other responsibilities and full student life.
You go.
I wouldn't want to do online, that's for sure.
So not like Harvard Law. It'd be something.
I mean, that would be cool, but I don't know that I could get into Harvard Law.
Neither one of us together is smart enough, probably. All right, so you serve both superintendent and principal of the middle school. I guess that's got to be a tough job, right?
It's tricky.
I mean, how do you balance those responsibilities?
It's tough being both the superintendent and the principal. I've got 6 through 12 as the principal and superintendent of the whole district. I've got a elementary principal that takes care of pre-K 5 and an assistant principal that does all of the discipline. So as the principal of the high school, some of my biggest focuses are on the curriculum, learning. I do a lot of all the teacher evaluations. Really, without the support group that we've got in place at Century, I don't know that I would be able to do it. I mentioned the principal, the elementary principal, the assistant principal. Our guidance counselor is very hands-on. Even our administrative assistants in the offices. Just the load that they can take off of myself and the other administration with the things that they do, they're all a huge help. Like I said, without them, I don't know that I would be able to make it happen.
Yeah, that's true. Just any organization, Shawnee, it's the same way. Without a good team behind you, you can't get anything done. For some people, they don't really understand, I think, the difference between what a principal's supposed to do and what a superintendent's supposed to do. Can you give us a kind of a nutshell argument of what that looks like?
Yeah, I have students ask me that all the time. They they aren't sure what that means. So as the principal, like I said, the biggest focus there is on the curriculum and learning more specific building level, working with teachers. And that side of it, there's definitely a lot more interaction with students. Superintendent side, primarily when I'm talking to students and explaining it to them, I tell them that's the financial side of things. There's more to it than that. There's the policies, but dealing with the budget, the grants, all the financial side of things, I think is the easiest way for me to explain it to kids, especially. But I'm fortunate we're in a district that's small enough that superintendent's not at some building away from the school. I'm right there in it, so I really enjoy getting to still be part of the day-to-day, seeing the kids, seeing the staff.
I don't know how much you have to spending your time working with boards, but I know I spend about 20% of my time just working with boards, making sure they have the communications they need in order to make decisions and stuff. And that's a really unique position that I had to learn over time as a president. Do you have the same issues or?
A little bit. I've got our board right now. Well, really since I've been there, and we've had some turnover over the years, but it's been a pretty good group to work with. Mm-hmm. They're not too demanding of things, and they're involved, but not to the point where they're trying to micromanage and overstep their roles.
And bless the people that serve on boards.
Absolutely.
Because they don't get paid.
No,
and
they're
really put in positions to make tough decisions that are really complex, and they're supposed to be at the very strategic level and resourcing institutions and things like that. And so they're trying to learn that role. So you got to kind of teach them that, but also give them the information they need to to be able to make the decisions that they need to make. So it's a tough job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
That's actually one of the things I'll be working on finishing up this afternoon when I get back to school. Is we've got a board meeting Monday night, so finishing up the board packet, getting everything ready for that, and wrapping up the budget for this year and all that end of the year stuff.
Budget wrap up, getting ready for FY26.
That's right.
Yeah, we're in sync about where our budget comes in tonight. So, so I know people talk about small rural colleges, and they look and they say, well, he wears two hats. He's a superintendent and a principal. But the reality is, it doesn't matter the size of the high school. You still have all of the other reporting that's required of Carterville or Carbondale or any other high school in the area.
Yeah, ours might be a little easier to do, just because we don't have the hundreds or thousands of students that some other districts have. But yeah, still the same reporting,
same duties, basically.
That's right. Being at a small school, it's definitely got its advantages, but my thing at the end of the day, trying to do what's best for kids.
Sure.
Whatever that is. You talk about wearing two hats. I've got multiple hats. I got my bus license to drive a school bus. I'll help out the custodians, help out in the kitchen, just wherever something's needed.
Yeah, that's the way we make things work in a rural environment.
That's right.
And it's not just two hats, really. Like you said, it's multiple ones moving forward. So the jobs like ours, they can certainly be stressful, and it's you got to learn to. At least me, I had to learn to manage that stress and not take it home to the family. And one of the ways I did that was listening to music. What's one book or movie or song that you listen to kind of help you recenter?
That's a good question. I mean, there's definitely the fair share of stress that comes along with the job, and like you said, it did take me a little bit to kind of learn to leave that at school the best I could. So I'm not taking it home to my family. A book, movie, or song. A book I've been reading lately, and I kind of hate to admit it, I'm not the biggest reader, but one thing I'm slowly making my way through is a book by Mike Manson that's not quite NSFW.
I got you.
The title of it is The Subtle Art of, I'm going to say, not caring. And that might sound like a weird title for a leadership book, but it focuses a lot on, not trying to please everyone. Life is messy sometimes. Life is difficult. There's going to be challenges, and that's okay. That's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to focus on the things that matter, and try to block out the rest. That's hard to do in these positions sometimes, but it's got some good advice in there, even if the language might be a little on the colorful side. Song wise, I've got a wide variety, very eclectic taste in music. Listen to a little bit of everything. If I had to pick one song, kind of maybe a weird choice, but Three Little Birds by Bob Marley. Every little thing is going to be all right.
Yeah, that's a good mellowing song.
It is,
especially if you can get a margarita.
And again, going back to sports, kind of a sports connection with that song. Back in 2013, the Boston Red Sox, when they won the World Series that year, they had an outfielder, Shane Victorino, the Flying Hawaiian. That was his walk-up song, and it kind of became a big thing for the fans, and they would chant that when he was coming up to the plate. And it's like that song really does just kind of ease your mind a little bit. Like, everything's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Ultimately, though, at the end of the day, I'd say more than anything, I enjoy doing things more than, a movie or a song. Playing activities, playing sports, doing things with the kids, getting outside and just taking some time.
Yeah, that's really healthy to be able to do.
Unwind a little bit. Yeah.
I like. I used to lift weights almost all the time, but kind of got away from that over the last few years. But I do like going outside and taking care of the yard. And putting the earphones in. And, the earmuffs on and just losing myself in thought.
Absolutely.
I like to do that. Of course, I'm usually playing some harder rock, metal stuff, some Slipknot or something.
I have a little bit of that mixed in as well. Like I said, it's a very eclectic mix that I enjoy. Anything from country to rock to classical to, I'll throw in some Kenny G every now and then too.
Well, I won't go there. So what people don't necessarily, I think, get is, and you said it, we try to do what's best for students. I think all of us do that. That's why we get in this business to begin with, because it's not really lucrative as much as people think it is. But the decisions aren't cut and dry either. They're not yes or no or right or wrong.
Right.
They're shades of gray or different colors, however you want to portray it. And I think, people will ask a question where the answer seems obvious and it's not really.
Yeah.
And so the idea of being able to manage stress and get out and just have think time, I think, is super important for me. Would you say you're in the same boat?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And kind of adding to that, you think about the social media aspect.
Yes.
You could talk for hours about the social media impact on students, but with Facebook, with Twitter, with everything that's available to people these days, those decisions that you make that could be obvious that aren't, and next thing you know, you're getting blasted on Facebook for
something. I know.
For something that's not completely accurate, or that's kind of frustrating, and it definitely adds to the stress level. But again, at the end of the day, you try to make the decisions that are best for kids.
Yeah, and sometimes it's which kids, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's part of the problem. And I think for me, and I don't engage in social, accounts, but I don't engage in it because there's no way in.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no way in, and it's just stirring the pot. Yeah. And the organization is, and the complexity of what we do, unless you've done it or are in it, it's hard to even explain. And even some folks that are in it at different levels don't understand the full organization, the way it works, and how it interacts and how it impacts students. And so there's just no win. You just have to learn to take a tough skinned approach and take the stress, I guess.
Yeah.
At least that's how I manage it.
No, you're right. Absolutely.
Century's in the heart of what I'd call several close-knit communities around here in Pulaski County. What makes your district unique, and how has the local culture shaped the approach?
Yeah, so we've got mainly 5 communities, different sizes, different kind of locations throughout the district. Olin, Karnak, Grand Chain, Perks, and Weetog. And I think, I don't know that it necessarily makes us unique from a small rural area, but it is that tight-knit connection that people have. A lot of the people that are around here, a lot of our students, a lot of our staff even, have generational ties to the area. They're from here. No matter which community you're in, you're going to know a lot of the other people in the area. And I think that definitely contributes to the culture of the district. Just people know each other, and that's great to be a part of.
And related, most of them.
That's true too. Yeah, there's a lot of family connections as well throughout. There's some that I'll find out new, and I've been at Century. This is wrapping up year 8. There's some I'll find out, like, heck, I didn't know that you guys were related. But it's great being part of that small community, because it does have kind of that more family feel about it. For me, I think as a leader, one of the things that's important in a small community is being visible. Mm-hmm. I talked about my superintendent office is right smack dab in the middle of the school. I'm not off in a separate building, so I try to get out and about as much as I can. I'm at events. It helps having kids that are playing, but I try to get out in the community as much as I can. And I think the people around here want to see that. They want to see somebody that's invested in the district and in the community. And I think that's important as a leader.
I agree with you. That's one of the areas I probably fall short on in getting out into the college more, because I am out in the community and go to different places, and then working with the board and that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're like, where'd the day go?
Yeah, absolutely.
I should have got out more. So that's great advice. That's really great advice. The relationship that Shawnee and Century has, I mean, it's kind of unique as well. I mean, you're our close neighbor, brother, sister, however you want to characterize it. How's that relationship kind of developed, I guess, from your mind over the years?
So we definitely, I'm thrilled with the relationship that we have with the college. There were some rough patches at times in the past, but I know, you and I have worked pretty well together, and trying to build that back up. We've got kids that are literally 2-3 miles down the road, and a good chunk of not only our kids, but probably a lot of kids in the Shawnee district are gonna end up spending some time at the college, taking some classes, and so it's been great seeing the college over the last handful of years, 5 years, kind of increase their presence in the school. More than anything, the kids want to have that connection to the college, kind of that personal connection. They want that person, and we've got some great advisors, great college staff that come out to the school that work with the kids. And, I think it's important for them to just have that relationship so that when they do come out here, they've got the friendly face down the hallway that they know. But it's been a good working relationship.
No, I enjoy it. I'm not afraid to say it even on podcasts. I tell everyone Century's my favorite school in our district. And then, of course, I was with Webb a couple days ago, so I told him. but seriously, I mean, we do have a great relationship, and Brent treats us great. I mean, he cooks for us and brought meals down to the college.
Yeah.
And just had his he's grilled out for us. He makes his students work. He brings them in here. He's reacted with the FFA.
Yeah, Brent's a pretty good guy. He does a lot for the school.
I think we sent you donuts one year to start school. So it's good to have you next door.
And we definitely appreciate the college being right next door to us as well.
So you're on the front lines recently of the tornado. It kind of hurt your gym a little bit. How did that experience test or affirm your leadership?
Well, first of all, I do want to say, obviously things could have been much worse. You see some of the damage that's happened over the last couple months since then. The Marion area, the Goreville area, and some of those places that have really had some heavy devastation. We were fortunate. I don't know if it was the tail end of a tornado, if it was some pretty severe straight line winds, but it peeled back the rubber membrane on our roof, basically the protective covering, and exposed it to all the rain. So by the time I got up there, the floor was pretty soaked in the gym. And I was definitely not the first person up there. There were a lot of other community members that were there already, and more people continued to come, not just for the curiosity side of it, but
to help out,
just wanting to help.
Yeah.
So many people willing to lend a hand wherever they could, and that continued for the next couple days and the immediate aftermath of that as well. So again, I go back to that tight-knit community, kind of that family feel. Everybody just wanted to come help. They wanted to do whatever they could to get things back up and running for the community, because the school is for those 5 communities, it's the main hub in the area. So just seeing everybody come out to help was great. Of course, telling a lot of them, well, let's wait and really assess it in daylight, and getting the insurance involved and going through all those processes ended up not needing as much help from a lot of them as they would have liked to. But at the end of the day, just them showing up ready to do whatever they could was amazing.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, whether you're pro consolidation or not, that's one of the things people, I think, in general don't understand about the nature of a local rural community that's invested in their schools.
Absolutely.
I mean, and to lose that is a dramatic and heartfelt loss.
Yeah.
And so that's why it makes those decisions so tough.
Yeah.
Because usually, at the end of the day, finances dictate everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So-
you talk about the consolidation piece.
Yeah.
Most of my educational experience, both as a student and as a staff member, whether it's teacher or administrator, have been at those types of schools.
Mhm.
Massac County probably excluded, but growing up in Joppa, we heard the rumors all the time about consolidation, and even while I was there as an administrator, and since then, Century. You look at all these small rural districts throughout the state that are making it and are that entire identity of the
Yes,
community.
yeah.
You take that away and you lose a lot.
Yeah, there's a big sense of loss, and because there's such a family, it's like losing a family member.
Yep.
It really is. So if you're pro consolidation, at least entertain that thought. Your neighbors could
Absolutely.
potentially feel a big loss
Yep.
when that happens. So what's a big aha moment that you've had in your experience in your career that continues to shape what you do today?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for me, it wasn't specifically something that happened in education directly,
Mhm.
but probably the biggest thing that has changed my mindset over the years is having kids, becoming a dad, and as those kids got into school, just the mindset shift to what would I want for my kids in this situation. That's really impacted a lot of how I deal with students, how I deal with staff, how I deal with parents.
Mhm.
Because, if I can reflect on a situation, whether that's academically, behaviorally, or anything else, I would want my kids as a parent treated a certain way. And I try to have that in the back of my mind all the time. So like I said, it's not really something that happened in education directly, but that's probably been the biggest thing that's been like, that makes a huge difference. Having kids go through it, you see things from a different perspective, and it definitely changes how you think about some of the stuff.
Have you seen a shift in the parents over the generations as the generations are changing?
Yeah, I definitely have. I don't know if any of those parents will be watching this, but no, I've definitely seen a shift over the years. I think there's the term used to be the helicopter parents,
Mhm.
and I think I've heard kind of recently the snowplow parents, where
I hadn't heard that, but I get
yeah,
it.
and you can probably get a good picture of what it's referring to. But parents are not just hovering over the kids and watching them, wanting what's right for them, but they're right there with them, pushing them along, for better or for worse sometimes. And I think sometimes parents and students both anymore are kind of afraid to fail. They want the A's, they want the starting spot on the ball team, they want all these things, but they don't want to do what's necessary to get there sometimes because they are afraid of it not going their way. And so I feel like that's been a big shift.
Well, I mean, the reason I mention that's because I think about my aha moment. I'm technically a baby boomer, but I really mostly identify with Gen X, so very independent. I'm not afraid of tech or anything like that. But I've seen the millennial parents kind of change. It's dynamic, much more. You use the term helicopter, but they're much more engaged with their student or their kids, and to the point of where they'll do their homework. To the point where they'll take their tests for them online or something.
And it's just in their own handwriting.
Yeah.
It's like you can't even pretend that the kid's doing it, because it's like your kid definitely doesn't write this good.
And so to me, I look at that and I think, what are you doing to your student or to your kid? And so, but it's not my call, it's how their relationship is with the kids. And I don't know that it's bad. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, is because I have a certain philosophy and mindset that really is kind of rooted mostly in Gen X kind of ideals. That doesn't necessarily mean it's right for Landon's kids.
Right.
And trying to figure out what's right for Landon's kids when you don't come from that is harder.
True.
So, and then the Gen Z kids, they're all totally different than their parents. They're very independent. They like the things the way they like them, when they like them, how they like them.
I think you mentioned, not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, as far as doing their work, doing the tests, different things, and being so hands-on, I guess, to an extent. We're in a world where kids can learn anywhere. They can learn anything from anywhere, and the problem solving, the critical thinking, I would say, is more important now than ever. But at the same time, I think some of that is hindered by that. I got the question a lot when I was teaching, when am I ever going to use this math? And the longer I got into education, it was like, you might not use graphing lines or finding derivatives or whatever the case might be, but it's teaching you some of those critical thinking skills. And if you've got parents doing the work for you or your friends doing the work for you, you lose out on some of those important skills.
Yeah, to me, and I've made this argument, I don't know if I made this argument with the superintendents at a meeting or not, but I know I've made this argument in the dual credit space before, maybe at the President's Council. But, we get students and parents that say, what do I have to take a history course? Why do I need to take this psychology course? I'm never going to use it. I just want to be a welder. But over the course of time, in my professional career, I've talked to literally thousands of employers, people who hire students, and they all tell you the same thing. You need people who can communicate with each other, communicate orally and in writing, need to take technical notes, technical manuals, fill out tech logs and things like that. So they need to be able to communicate. They need to be able, and then they need to be able to solve problems, complex social problems. They'll tell you that. And then they'll say, well, you also need to weld, right? And so if you look at those skills that they're most desirable of, communication, problem solving, critical thinking. Those are things, and you ask yourself as an educator, and I know you know these answers because you've got a PhD. That's a process that's developed habit that's developed over time by doing these things over and over again. So if you're studying social studies and you're learning about, George Washington, Revolutionary War, the important thing isn't that he was the first president. The important thing is to understand the political ideologies going on at the time and be able to think about that social issue and then convert that thought to paper. And the more you do it, the stronger you get. And the stronger you get, the more problems that you can solve and the more valuable that you can get. And so the idea of taking these courses, there's just a mechanism. So it's not necessarily getting the right derivative answer, or integrating the problem. It's the process and the mental discipline that you develop doing it yourself. And if the parent is doing that for them, it feels like to me that they're kind of robbing their student, and they don't know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, at least I'm not alone in that. I kind of feel like maybe that's too old school.
Well, and you talk about some of those soft skills, the communication, the problem solving. I think hopefully we're far enough away from it that we're making some differences, but we've got a lot of kids we're still dealing with that had such their formative years right in the middle of COVID.
Right. That's
where communication with others really took a hit. Like I said, we're far enough away from that, and I kind of hate to even mention COVID, but that was a big time for a lot of these younger kids.
Well, you're a math teacher, and you said your wife teaches at AJ.
Yep.
My wife teaches at the middle school at Daniel. She teaches 5th grade every science. So every year she kind of gives an assessment of her students to see where they're at from a mathematics standpoint. So basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, just to see where they're at. Over the last 2 or 3 years, guess how many of those students actually pass those things?
Not as many as used to, I'm sure.
It's a high percentage, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more than 50% that don't pass. And so, but if you look at the 5th grade math curriculum, tell me if I'm wrong, but don't they have to do fractions and multiply and divide, decimals and things like that?
Yep.
How do you do fractions if you can't add and subtract?
Yep.
And so what I see here is students came in 2020 where they're somewhere in K-12, and they didn't even get a full year in 2020 because March hit.
Right.
Everybody had to go home until we kind of could figure out the protocols. And then some schools, they taught everything online that next year. You weren't one of them.
No,
but
we were in person, but it was a weird in person. That's for sure.
Yeah, everybody had to be 20 feet or 6 feet or whatever it was from each other. But the thing is even that wasn't the same kind of learning.
Right.
And so then after year 2, so they're about a year and a quarter behind, but we had to pass them, right? And now they're 2020, they're 2025. Those who were in kindergarten had that experience, so they didn't really get the foundational skills.
Yeah.
I don't feel like.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm a college president, pontificating from on top, but it feels like they didn't get the skills that they needed, and they're now coming through kind of as a ripple. Would you say that that's an accurate assessment?
I absolutely think so. We're not seeing it as much now. But those kids that were in kindergarten, 1st grade, I mean, it took a couple years.
Are you getting them caught up?
Well, we're trying to.
Yeah,
there's still a lot of struggles with it though.
I bet.
That are kind of lingering from that. But we still gotta get them to where they need to be.
We've got a motor run.
Yeah.
That's one of the struggles, and I've challenged our team here. How can we help our K-12 partners with that? Because you can't do it. We don't have the resources.
Yeah.
And obviously, the government's not going to give you 3 or 4 summer schools in a row so that you have the funding to actually catch them up. So how do we do that as a community together? So, I mean, if you got ideas, let us know, because we'd be happy to help you, because these are our future students.
Yeah.
And so it's an investment in our future as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I guess along those same lines, kind of cuts the path. How do you envision K-12 schools like Century working more closely with colleges, especially in our rural communities, to help students make smoother transitions into higher ed?
I think, especially in our rural area, community colleges are huge for the students in this area. I kind of reflect back on my own experience. And like I said, coming from a graduating class of 17, I came here first, and then I went to SIU. If I had gone straight to SIU, I don't know that I'd be sitting here today. It's a big difference going from a small school to university. So kind of having that bridge in between to, and even if you're not going to university, having the options at a community college, having the opportunities to either work towards a certificate of some sort, work kind of the CTE path, or if it is just getting your associates and moving on. I think the flexibility that a community college offers is crucial to the rural area we're in.
Yeah, I grew up in Danville, and so at that time Danville had about just south of 60,000 population. Now it's like 30, but so my graduating class was 517. But I came down here. I think I told you this story. I came down here to play baseball for Itchy, and I immediately didn't want to play.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many new options, and I ended up. I mean, I got kicked out. Wasn't for grades, although I was pretty close. I was like a 2.1 or something, but I didn't go to class. I just wasn't mature enough to handle it. But Danville, I went back to, it was Danville Junior College, it's DACC now. It really helped me. It put, instead of attending a class in Lawson Hall where you had 500-600 students and then being taught by a TA, I got into a class where it was smaller, 20, 25.
Yeah.
I started experiencing academic success because I had better interaction with the faculty and the students, and it really just helped save my life, honestly. Yeah. And so I think going straight to the university, even from a pretty large school to the SIU was scary. Yeah. I can't imagine coming from a rural space into that. That's a crazy environment.
Yeah, and even coming from Shawnee, it was still a big adjustment. But like I said, if I hadn't come here first and experienced kind of on a smaller scale that college life to an extent, it can be overwhelming for sure.
So what can we do to work better together, do you think?
I mentioned earlier just that kind of the relationship that the college staff is able to build when they come into the buildings and work with our students. Because students now, probably more than when I was in school, they kind of crave that human connection.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And so I think just that presence, being in touch with the kids, I think that can really make a difference for a lot of them, because like I said, even coming from a small school to Shawnee, that can be a little bit overwhelming in itself, because you're coming out here and you might not know a whole lot of people other than the kids you graduated with, but if you've got someone in the registration office or a staff member that you know and have worked a lot with, it makes that transition a lot easier. So I think, and you guys have been present at some of our parent nights, different events that we've had, and I know you've been present at some of the other schools. I think continuing to do things like that, continuing to be out and about and making those connections with the families, with the kids and the parents, to make that transition that much easier.
Well, we're trying.
Yeah.
We are trying. I mean, you just probably seen when we're celebrating our HLC accreditation reaffirmation. First time in the college's history, we made it through clean. It sounds, when I put it like that, not like a big deal, but for us, it's a really big deal.
Yeah.
And that meant that we've had to change a lot of things that we did in the past to fix those things. And some of those things doesn't necessarily have a positive impact necessarily with students, and so we do need to have more conversations. I think over the course of fixing those things by applying real financial aid rules, we created problems sometimes with parents and not understanding how the federal government expects us to apply Pell and that kind of stuff, and with the dual credit stuff and implementing the actual standards that we're supposed to implement and hold them to it. By just following the rules has created a kind of a hiccup in our relationship sometimes. But one of the things, and I've got a reputation because I'm also focused a lot on the financial elements of this, that I'm against dual credit, which I'm not. I'm actually a very strong proponent of it, but it needs to be intentional. And so what we've been trying to do is get that message to students, and really it needs to go to their parents. This has to be intentional. You can't just take a class here and there and expect it to add up, and because the data's not consistent. I'll just put it that way. If you look at there's a certain amount of dual credit hours that students take, they don't come here. Simple as that.
Yeah.
There's a financial model. Somebody pays for dual credit. If it's not the students and their parents, who's paying for it? It's our students with higher tuition that are non-dual credit. So, how do you think we can get that message to the students' parents? Because if a student knows they want to be a teacher, we can get them there. If they know they want to go to SEMO, that path's a little different, though, than if they want to go to SIU.
Right.
Or if they want to go to Murray State, it's a little different even than those two.
Right.
And so if you take a class here, you could get yourself off here. I experienced it with my oldest son going to SIU. He ended up he changed majors, of course. He just started as an engineering, went into business, and so he didn't take one of the economics courses that he needed. And when he got to his senior level, that was a prerequisite to some of the other courses he had to take. And so he had to go back to take that course. And of course, it wasn't aligned with some of the junior, senior classes he needed to take. And so he had to take a full load. So he ended up taking a major that he didn't anticipate. And so, but it ended up spending an extra year at the bottom line instead of actually getting out when he should have. So, then people look at the Shawnee like, well, your credits didn't transfer. So to me, how do we do a better job of getting that message to the parents? Let's help your student identify where they want to go, what majors they want, and let's get them on that path. But also realize that if you change that, come see us so we can make those adjustments sooner than later.
Well, one thing I will kind of give a plug on that you guys have done, and I think it looks fantastic, is on your website,
that portal?
Yes, where you can put in, you can select your high school and it'll show you kind of this is what you'll need to go to, whatever. But
it's aligning with a major too. I mean, you can't just align with a college.
Yes, no, that's what I mean. You select your major and it lays out pretty clearly for you. And you guys have done a good job kind of putting that together. And I think something like that, those kind of tools are important for kids and parents to see. I was one going into Shawnee. I knew exactly what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. I had it all mapped out, and it was basically, I could register myself because I knew this is what I need, this is what I want to get to. But there's not a lot of people that are like that, and having those tools available. But at the same time, it's hard for the college to communicate that to everybody, to reach all of the districts, all of the families in this area. So I think the relationship with the districts, the school, the 9-12 districts, the guidance counselors, the administration to kind of help with some of that messaging, I think can be important because there might be times where parents might see something that the college puts out, but they don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But if it came from the school as well, just the messaging kind of working together to kind of spread that a little bit more.
My team. I think last year, maybe it was the year before, I went out with my team on the parent nights. We didn't get a lot of participation, 4 or 5 parents here and there. And my team this year came back saying the same things. 3 or 4 parents show up for a parent night, and they're competing with other activities. So I'm not 100% convinced that parent nights, at least the way we're implementing it, work. So if there's different ways that we can connect with the parents, with your counselors and your team, I think we'd be open to that because the message is not getting out really.
Right.
And there's tools there to do that. And the problem is higher education makes itself kind of difficult, right? Because you look at SIU, how many colleges do they have within the university? 7 or 8, something like that. There's arts and science and letters,
right?
College of Engineering, College of Business. So you take like College of Business and you look inside that, there's 9 different majors, and none of them are aligned. They all have a different they got some same courses in them, but if you're economics, you need these courses, and if you're finance, you need a couple of these courses, but not them, you need these others. And so people just say, I'm going to College of Business at SIU. Okay, so even if you're doing that, you want to really kind of navigate that path a little bit more. So I think we got to do a better job of explaining that to our parents and just so they know what to expect. It's okay if a kid changes majors. I mean, I did. Did you?
I didn't know.
Nah, you knew what you wanted. You locked in. I could tell.
There might have been some days I wanted to. But,
I started off as an engineer, and here I am.
The conversation with Dr. Landon Sommer continues on the next episode of Campus Conversations, the Shawnee Community College podcast.